We're in 2 Kings 8, 1 through 15 today. So, Lord, we're appreciative of your word. We're appreciative that it's alive. And we pray as we go through your word today that your character, your attributes, and your heart will be felt. Soften our hearts. Help us open our hearts this morning. Speak to us, Lord, in your holy name. Amen. Amen. I'm going to talk to you about a Muslim today. Well, he started off as a Muslim, didn't end up a Muslim. It was kind of strange. But Muhammad Yusuf was the leader of a militant group in Nigeria in the early 2000s. He was raised in a Muslim family and received an Islamic education and studied under traditional Muslim scholars. And by the early 2000s, he had become really popular. He was a great preacher, known for his charisma and strong speaking and oratory skills, like me. And his following was mostly full of unemployed youth and students who were disillusioned and kind of angry at the corruption that was happening in the Nigerian government. As his following grew, Yusuf officially founded and named the group Boko Haram in 2002. He established a mosque and an Islamic school, which doubled as training grounds for his young followers. He gathered a core group of loyalists, like I said before, a lot of them poor, unemployed, angry about any corruption or inequality. And Yusuf's movement clashed a bunch with local Muslim leaders and the Nigerian state. And so he began denouncing Islamic scholars who cooperated with the government. His followers refused to take government jobs, they didn't go to public schools, and they didn't participate in normal civil life. Violence associated with this group was not a thing yet, but the radicalism was starting to grow, and his message became more and more confrontational. And the authorities in Nigeria began to see him as a threat. And so he was arrested several times, but they couldn't pin anything on him, so he would always get released. And despite government pressure, his following just kept growing and growing and growing. And the spark that ignited all of the violence that is still happening to this day happened in 2009, when the group they were upset about a motorcycle helmet law. And for some reason, everything went crazy after that. One little motorcycle helmet law and just everything erupted. The event became known as a major uprising. Yusuf was captured by the military for creating this insurgency and is executed in police custody. And all of this happened outside of the common judiciary system. So that moment, his death fueled outrage in his followers, and it laid the groundwork for a rise in other ruthless leaders who were lower in the organization, and they turned Boko Haram into a full-blown terrorist group. Happy Sunday. They began killing government officials and Christians, and it has escalated dramatically in the last 10 years. They're burning churches, they're abducting young girls, assassinating pastors, and massacring entire villages. But despite this horror, despite all of this, the church in Nigeria has not diminished, and it has deepened. And here are a few recent quotes from individuals. So in 2020, a village in northeast Nigeria was attacked by Boko Haram. Homes were ransacked, and a Brethren church was burned to the ground. But just a few months later, under armed watch, the congregation met in the open air and began to sing hymns with the charred remains of the church behind them. The pastor said, "This building may be gone, but Christ is not. We are still his." Next, Pastor Lawan Amdani, a respected leader in the Christian Association of Nigeria, was kidnapped by Boko Haram in 2020. In a video recorded shortly before his execution said this: "I have never been discouraged because all conditions that one finds himself in is in the hand of God. If the time comes that I am no more, it is because God appointed that time." He was beheaded a few days later. But his peace, even in captivity, and his sticking to, trusting in God, became a witness to millions. And in 2019, a Nigerian Christian woman whose husband and 2 sons were killed told a local news station, "I have forgiven those who did this. I want them to know Christ, and I want them to know what they stole from me and what Jesus offers them instead." We don't understand why things spiral the way they do. One seemingly insignificant motorcycle helmet law, and 15 years later, Christians are being actively hunted in their villages and their towns. Seasons shift suddenly. Loss and suffering and injustice come without warning, but God remains faithful. His glory is seen, and he works in all things. He works in redemption, he works in tragedy, and he works in martyrdom. And as we turn to our text today, we're going to see the Shunammite woman again gets pieces of God's faithfulness. His entire being, his entire providence. We're going to see Elisha shaken to the core and burdened to tears. And we're going to see a king murdered. History presses forward. People rise and fall, but behind it all, God is sovereign. And sometimes our only hope that as these things unravel and as the next thing happens, as things change and seasons shift, is to wholly and humbly put our trust in him. Just in him. So let's go to our text today. 2 Kings 8, 1 through 15. Now Elisha said to the woman whose son he had restored to life, "Arise and depart with your household and sojourn wherever you can, for the Lord has called a famine, and it will come upon the land for 7 years." So the woman arose and did according to the word of the man of God. She went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years, and at the end of the 7 years, when the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, she went to appeal to the king for her house and her land. Now the king was talking with Gehazi, a servant of the man of God, saying, "Tell me all the great things that Elijah has done." And while he was telling the king how Elijah had restored the dead to life, behold, a woman whose son he had restored to life appealed to the king for her house and her land. And Gehazi said, "My lord, O king, here is the woman, and here is her son, whom Elijah restored to life." And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed an official for her, saying, "Restore all that was hers, together with all the produce of the fields from the day." And she left the land until now. Verse 7. Now Elisha came to Damascus. Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, was sick, and it was told to him that the man of God has come here. And the king said to Hazael, "Take a present with you, go meet the man of God, and inquire of the Lord through him, saying, 'Shall I recover from this sickness?'" So Hazael went to meet him, took a present with him, and all kinds of goods from Damascus, 40 camel loads. And when he came and stood before him, he said, "Your son, Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, has sent me to you, saying, 'Shall I recover from this sickness?' And Elisha said to him, 'Go, say to him, you shall certainly recover. But the Lord has shown me that he shall certainly die.' And he fixed his gaze and stared at him until he was embarrassed. And the man of God wept. And Hazael said, "Why does my Lord weep?" He answered, "Because I know the evil that you will do to the people of Israel. You will set fire to their fortresses. You will kill their young men with a sword and dash their little ones to pieces and rip open their pregnant women." And Hazael said, "What is your servant, but who is a dog, that he should do this great thing?" Elijah answered, "The Lord has shown me that you are to be king over Syria." Then he departed from Elisha and came to his master, who said to him, "What did Elijah say to you?" And he answered, "He told me that you would certainly recover." But the next day he took a bedcloth, dipped it in water, and spread it over his face till he died. And Hazael became king in his place. Thank you for bearing with me through that. I have dyslexia. So the words were all backwards in my brain anyway. I didn't write them backwards. Maybe I should write them backwards, and they'd be front ways. Anyway. But we're going to finish our study on Elisha. This is done. This is the last weekend of Elisha's ministry that we're going to go through. We're moving. It's been really neat. Like, I've heard these stories before, obviously, but just in passing. And the amount of compassion, the amount of love, the amount of God's character that is shining through these stories in the Old Testament just blew my mind. And it convicted me just as much as any story in the New Testament of Jesus would, because we're learning about God, and it's so sweet. I love it. I really have enjoyed this time in the Old Testament. We're switching to the New Testament, so whap, whap. I'm just kidding. Never whap, whap with the Bible. Don't do that. But remember, Elisha, this entire time, he's been a prophet of mercy and compassion. There's obviously been bigger picture stuff, but we see sandwiched between all these big stories a lot of these little intimate moments. In these moments in Elijah's ministry, we've caught glimpses of God's essence, who he is, his character, and his heart for us. We've seen him be almighty and powerful, ending a famine with just a sound, multiplying food for the hungry, raising the dead. But we've also seen him be omnibenevolent, so kind, endlessly kind to the oppressed. He multiplied oil so that a woman's sons wouldn't get sold into slavery. When an axe head, an expensive piece of iron axe head, falls into the water, into the Jordan, throws a stick and it comes back up, right? Like, there's compassion there. He's caring about the littlest details. And today, obviously, one of the main characters of this whole thread, we have the Shunammite woman who has years of history with Elisha. Remember, her son, or her husband and her were wealthy, and Elijah would always be passing through, so he made her, she made him a nice little house with a desk and a lamp, and so he could, when he's going back and forth, take a nap or eat with them or study or rest. You know what I mean? Like, she was being kind to Elisha as he's passing through. So Elijah wanted to bless them. Gehazi told Elijah that they didn't have an heir. They were old and wealthy and had a long life of success, but with no one to leave it to. So Elisha tells her, in a year, you're going to have a baby. And she does. Fast forward a few more years, and that little boy is out in the field working with his father. The picturesque happy ending. The heir is there, learning the tools of the trade. It's going to be great. They had everything. A dad working with his son, happy and fulfilled. But as they were working, one day the boy said, "My head hurts." So his father sends him inside with his mother. Boy sits on mom's lap and just dies. The happy ending is, it ends in tragedy. Confused. Lonely. Questioning. But we see the Shunammite woman, she doesn't even tell her husband. She just tells him, "Give me a donkey and a servant, I'm going to go to Elisha." The husband asks, "What's wrong? Is everything all right?" She says, "No, it's fine. It is well." She gets to Elijah and has him return to the house, and Elisha sends Gehazi ahead, and he says, "Don't stop for anyone, just go and put the staff on his face, and it'll be good." Puts the staff, and it doesn't work, and Elisha's like, "Oh, okay, here we go. Staff didn't work, let's see what we got going on." When Elijah gets there, he paces in that room where the boy is, and stretches himself over him and breathes over him, and the boy is raised to life. The Shunammite woman becomes a picture of deep trust and deep faith in God in the midst of probably one of the most difficult and broken situations of her life. And now it's this same woman, the same Shunammite woman, we're told is coming to appeal to the king for her property. In verse 1, Elijah told her, "Leave the land and flee because there's 7 years worth of famine coming." Imagine that. All those decades of hard work. The land is their home. That's all they've known. But she shows us obedience and faith. She listens to Elijah's instructions and escapes the whole famine with her family. 7 years go by. She's faithful to the time period. She doesn't come back too early, or she doesn't stay in the land. Obviously in 7 years you're going to build some type of life where you are. So she doesn't stay. She immediately after 7 years comes back. But she's appealing to Jehoram alone. Her husband should have been the one leading this interaction. In this culture, in this society, the patriarch is in charge of all that type of big picture stuff, dealings with the king. He must have passed away. This scripture tells us he's an older guy at the beginning of 2 Kings. At the beginning of our study, we figured out he was an older guy, and so he must have passed away in the land of the Philistines because he's just not mentioned here. So the king is seized the land, and she's a widow now, so she has no easy path to make a claim on it again. It's a pretty tight spot for her to be in. The Lord told me to do this. Now my land's gone. What am I supposed to do? Her husband worked hard to build a life for her and her son, and the government took it all. She doesn't have anyone to plead her case or defend her. And it's natural that she would come to this type of interaction with some type of fear and anxiety because this king his lineage is not known for being merciful and kind in these type of situations. His mom killed a man and then gave her husband the dead guy's land. So it looks bleak. Like from the outside, it looks pretty bleak. But as a matter of perfect timing, pure providence, the Lord's sovereignty, as she's approaching him, the king is just listening to stories of Elijah's life, told from a Gehazi. As she approaches to make the biggest request of her life, this wicked king is all buttered up and almost giddy and kind of fangirling over the stories of Elisha, the healings, the faithfulness. Gehazi says, look, this is the woman. This is her. This is the woman whose son died. Elijah brought this kid back to life. And Jehoram is like super thrilled to meet her, like a movie star or something, I'd imagine. No way. That's crazy. I just heard all these stories, and now you're here? And in a very out of character, out of protocol way, he says, yeah, give her land back. And all the produce that it had bore during this time while she was away. And that part can be easily overlooked. He's basically saying, appointing someone, hey, you do 7 years worth of economics, 7 years worth of math, and figure out how much wealth came from that land and just give it all back to her. And we see the Shunammite woman again, wildly, sweetly, tenderly cared for. And in God's perfect timing, she comes to Jehoram. She escaped the famine and now regains her property and her son's inheritance. God gave the barren woman a son, raised him from the dead, and now restores the family legacy. From the beginning to the end, God has shown himself faithful. His faithfulness is constant. It does not change. It doesn't falter. There are 2 truths that are not in contradiction that we must understand when it comes to Christianity. The first one, hard days are ahead. You will be tried. You will be pushed. You will be squeezed. You will be pressed. Life will be difficult. Financial issues, relational strife, health problems, etc., you name it. The seasons where you just feel like you're at the end, like existing is just exhausting, right? That's the truth. That's a truth for us with our time here on earth. But the second truth, in all of that, in all the pressing, in all the heaviness, God will not abandon us. He will finish what he started. All things work together for those who love him and are called according to his purposes. Trial is coming, and provision is promised. And sometimes the timing will feel like a coincidence, but it's not. He wrote that story a long, long time ago for things to be in the just right spot at the just right time, so he gets all the glory. God is faithful to the Shunammite woman in every season. And he's faithful to you in every season. You may feel like everything is lost and nothing is working. You may feel like God is far. You may be wondering where God even is, or where he went, or if he's even up there. My wife and I, for the first 7 years of our marriage, we really wanted a baby. It wasn't happening for whatever reason. We went to some doctors. Some people said, we don't know why. Some people said, it's definitely not going to happen. And we were just numb to it. There was a grieving period. Then at 7 years, you're just kind of numb to it. Like, if it happens, it happens. And it really looked like it wasn't going to happen. And then, like, craziest, happiest day of my life, just 1 week, a pregnancy test came back positive, and it was wild. Like, I was so surprised that I couldn't even be happy. That's how surprised I was, just shock. Because it was 7 years, man, of like, negative this, negative that. Take another test. No, not this time, right? We were like, it was the happiest moment. I'm not going to speak for you. It was the happiest moment other than our wedding day of like our marriage. So sweet. And it was awesome. Fast forward 6 months later, he was born. And if you're doing the math, that was three months early. He was not breathing, really bad brain bleed. He was sick. Happiest, greatest moment of my life? Yeah, good. 6 months later. Lowest, most scared, most confused and mad and helpless I've ever felt. The Lord moved miraculously, like healing him and developmentally and medically, like you wouldn't even know that anything like that was his beginning, right? You wouldn't even know today. And it's so sweet. I get to see a physical picture, a physical representation of his grace and mercy in my house every morning. And then the grace and mercy tells me, hey, I pooped my pants. And I'm like, wow. Go tell Mom. But if I look back, and if I can be selfish about this for a second, if I look back at what he was doing in me in all that, I had gotten to, and I hadn't realized this, I had gotten to a really weird spot in my Christian walk. I let my mind and my imagination go to the point where the God that I thought was up there somewhere was different than what he actually was. Things got twisted, and they had been slowly getting twisted even before my marriage and stuff, right? So this has been a long time coming. And I didn't realize how dark and how warped my view of the Lord and view of Christianity was until I was pressed. And life got pretty heavy. And I realized I had nothing to stand on. I had no foundation. And it was in that moment that he so sweetly and undeservingly pulled me back from that darkness that I had put myself in. I didn't deserve that. Why didn't he just leave me to my vices? He just kept leading me down the path. That was the God I was thinking of. Oh, you conjure up what you can do in your mind, and your mind's in control of everything, and, say you're fine, and you're fine, right? I wasn't fine. I didn't deserve him pulling me up out of that. But he's consistent. He's faithful, and he's true. The hard, pressing situations around me, he used for his ultimate glory. And I can look back now and tell myself and tell other people that, yeah, he's good. He's good. Life's heavy sometimes, and it's hard, but he's good. He was working in my life When I was selfish and blinded, he was still moving. God is faithful to the Shunammite woman in every season. And he's faithful to you in every season. Our scene shifts a little bit. A lot of it. Damascus is pretty far from wherever we just were. Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, is sick now, and he really wants Elijah's input. We don't know why he wants Elijah's input. It could have been from Naaman a few chapters back. He realized that Naaman was healed of leprosy, or it possibly could just be that he's geographically closer. Like he's hearing that Elisha's in a city that he's normally not, and he's like, oh, let's figure out, see if I'll get better. So he sends his servant, Hazael, to see Elisha and ask him, will my master recover? And they come, in their classic pagan thinking, they come with all their gifts and everything like that. And Elisha just says, no, you can't buy. You can't buy the presence of the Lord. You can't buy prophecy. This is not anything like that. So when Hazael gets there, he asks. And Elisha looks Hazael in the face and says, oh yeah, he'll recover. But then Elijah just stares at him. Imagine it was something like this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring funny parts into the scary parts of the Bible. And as he's staring at him, Hazael's getting embarrassed. And then Elisha just weeps, just begins to cry. Hazael asks Elisha, why are you crying? And remember, through this entire walk of Elisha's ministry, he's been super consistent. When famine comes, he multiplies bread. Expensive axe head sinks, raises it up. He's surrounded by Syrian armies. He prays that his servants would see who's on his side, on their side. When the king's servant comes to kill him in the midst of a famine, Elisha confidently backs up the character of God and delivers a prophecy to the servant. He knows peace. He knows confidence. And now he's trembling in tears, weeping in front of Hazael. It's almost as if he's seeing this vision play out in front of him. He says, I know what you're going to do to Israel. You'll burn their fortresses, kill our young men, dash our children on rocks, and slice open our pregnant women. And Elisha trembles with emotion. The man of God is broken as God reveals what's coming. Part of the life of faith, part of the life of prayer is carrying some type of burden. Sometimes the closer you walk to God, the more you feel. The more you see the depravity that there is in humanity, the more you see the brokenness, the closer you connect with Him, the closer you commune with Him, the more you see in this world. And this feeling, this is where intercessors are born. Men and women of prayer cut their teeth in these type of situations when God reveals the dark days ahead. And the church should know tears from time to time. It's appropriate to feel burdened, to feel grieved, spiritually frustrated with the state of the world. The Christian life cannot be this endlessly, putting your head in the sand and coasting and waiting for the next comfortable thing. He shows us what it's like to truly be burdened. And his tears aren't a sign of failure or immaturity or lack of faith. Elijah is moved because he feels something. When was the last time something burdened you like this? And I'm not talking about somebody posts something on Facebook and you go into the comments and give your 2 cents. Or I'm not talking about you're scrolling or watching the news and article or something pops up and you just shake your head in disgust or anger. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when was the last time you were really overwhelmed by the hurting around you to the point where it pushed you to the place of prayer. To the point where it interrupts your normal schedule. To the point where that's the only thing that's occupying your mind. It just can't leave your mind. Elisha cared about souls. Elisha is broken at what Hazael is going to do because he's close to God's heart, and God's heart is for his people. As I was studying this, I was like, dude, I need more of that warmness. I want to have a heart like that. We as the church need more of that genuine burden for people based on the foundation that everyone is stamped in the image of God, has the image of God. Israel in this time period is constantly missing it, rejecting God, trying to be their own author, mocking God, worshiping idols, unrepentant hearts, and Elisha just weeps. It's easy, super easy in our day to get bitter and cold and group people together and put people in different places on different sides. Politics goes crazy, ideologies go crazy, families are driven apart, people dig their heels in. But as Christians, it has to break our hearts. And the only way to keep your heart warm and free from any of that bitterness is to remain in constant communion with the Lord. When we're close to his heart, we get his heart. Hazael responds to Elisha after hearing all this. He's like, I'm a dog. I'm a nobody. What could I accomplish? How could I do this great thing? You hear that I think that's what it said. I'll find it. It's way gone. How could I do this great thing, he says. He says great thing. Like this was already in his heart. He's like, oh, that sounds great. This was sitting in there. This wasn't something that he was shocked by. He wasn't offended. Oh, how could I do that? He was asking, no, how could I do that? That's intriguing. Elijah responds and says, soon you'll be the king of Syria. And I imagine the walk back. Hazael's like, oh my goodness, this is going down. A prophet knows, and if a prophet knows, I know God knows. So this is happening. He wanted to get it done as quickly as possible so that maybe he thought Elijah was going to tell more people or more people will find out. So when Hazael returns, takes a cloth, dips it in water, and suffocates Ben-Hadad. And he likely murdered him in a way to where it wouldn't, they didn't do CSI forensics back then, but it was probably in a way to where it would have looked natural. He was already sick. It's a nice little rag covered in water. It's fine. And we have some record of this in the commentaries. It said, the Assyrian record confirms that Hazael did control Syria by 842 BC, that he is called a son of a nobody, meaning he was known as a usurper. Son of nobody. He didn't have lineage to be king. So something had to happen in order for him to become king. He had no lineage. He was a usurper. And he was a super powerful, very influential, and cruel king. And so we see this awful turn in leadership. super tragic shift in power. Israel's next enemy comes to power through deception and murder. Yet, God saw Hazael's intention from the start. God is not shocked by the wicked. He's not shocked by their plans. He's not shocked by the wicked men. He knows the days ahead. And he let Elisha see the evil that's quickly coming. And there are dark days for every generation. But not one surprises the Lord. He sees, he knows, and he will prevail over every enemy. Though we're shocked, though we're grieved, though it freaks us out sometimes, makes us anxious, God cannot be surprised. God cannot be moved. And the enemy always seems to overplay his hand, overextends himself. As he manipulates and terrifies, and twists and turns, he's always stumbling too far into the middle of God's next great act. And a good recent picture of this is the atheist movement that started in the early 2000s, the new atheist movement. There's always been atheists, but those atheists were like, oh, you don't believe in God? That's fine. It was neutral. They weren't like out to get us. But these new atheists were saying, no, everything institutional, everything that has to do with religion needs to be cut out and gone because it is the thing that's hurting humanity. And so it gained a ton of traction. Spilled into politics and moral lines began to blur, and America became, for the first time ever, a post-Christian nation. Also, mental health plummeted, and the unattainable perfection that the new atheists promised felt even farther away. Fast forward to just about 6 or 7 years ago, and people were still hurting, but now they're aimless, they're confused, and they're angry. And this purposelessness, this illogical moral thinking, this worldview is the very thing that is driving people now back to church. As they look for answers, as they look for peace, as they look for direction. And for the first time in 3 decades, the data is showing that there's an uptick in church attendance. The enemy thought he had a play. He thought he could get us. But the very thing he was using is the very thing that's driving people back. He always goes too far. God, in his perfect omnipotence, redeems it all. So, while Hazael was a wicked ruler and an evil usurper, not for a moment is God shaken. There are dark strings, there are dark situations that unravel around us, but even the darkness is not dark to him. Seth, you can come on up here. We'll get ready to close. So as we finish our study on Elisha's life and ministry, it's done. There was a weird part a little bit later in 2 Kings 13 maybe, where the bones of Elisha, somebody got buried on top of him and the person was alive because of the bones. We didn't do that one because that's kind of not. Elisha didn't have anything to do with that. He was dead. So we're ending it here. We end with a rise of evil. We end as a murderer takes the throne. A prophet weeps and a nation is spiraling. And yet God is not absent. He's not indifferent. And he's not losing. He's faithful. In Nigeria, currently, probably this morning, as we're all sitting in here, churches are being targeted and pastors are being hunted because of a motorcycle helmet law. We're going to have things like motorcycle helmet laws that spiral into big things. We've seen stuff like that. One little thing creates this big thing. And yet Christ is still risen. The gospel is still advancing. The church is still singing. God does not promise ease and comfort in this life. He promises providence. As Christians, we are not immune to pain. But every little bit of pain we feel, he redeems. So if you're in a moment right now where things don't quite make sense, you're mourning, you're burdened, you're bittered, confused, exhausted from the weight of it all, be reminded of who he is. God is still faithful. He is still present. And he will get all the glory. Through famine, through kings, through weeping, through you, he will get all the glory. We need to trust in the God that holds all of history in his hands. I'm going to end with a quote from a Presbyterian guy that I like. Do not despair. Does history not tell us this lesson over and over again? That God loves to reveal his marvelous light in moments of great and deep darkness. How else will we, stubborn and so often hard-hearted people, appreciate the light if we aren't reminded every now and then of the real darkness it saves us from the midst of? Christ is on his throne. He's judging the nations with a rod of iron. His enemies are being made a footstool for his feet. He laughs at the schemes of the wicked. He holds them and their little plans in derision. Lift your head and hear the good news. All they can ever do is threaten you with death. But that threat is empty. Our King has already shown us the way out of the grave. Follow him and be of good cheer. So y'all can stand to your feet. Altar team, if you want to make your way up front. Today, if you have those questions of where is he? Is he even there? Why is this happening? You're completely allowed. As a Christian, you are. It's awesome. You're allowed to ask those questions. But you've got to let him answer. It's an open dialogue. And when he answers, you're going to meet faithfulness. You're going to meet compassion. You're going to meet something so supernaturally consistent. Because his heart is for you. And providence is promised. So today, if that's you, the altars are open. Also, we had a few words in the back as we were praying for couples specifically. It doesn't necessarily have to be a marriage, but if you're a dating couple, that the Lord wants to move and touch. He wants to bring more unity, more understanding, open ears, maybe get rid of some bitterness, removing fear and strife in that relationship. So if that's you, please come forward and receive prayer. Also, if you are sick in any way, mentally, physically, spiritually sick, we would love to pray for you. And also, if you don't know Christ, you've never met the faithfulness, never felt the consistency, he's here this morning. He's here this morning. He's ready to answer all your questions. If you would just let him answer. Open your heart and let him answer those questions. So worship with the team as we pray.